Welcome back to the video, everybody, and today we're going back into the bodybuilding basics and nutrition basics, and today we have fats and essential fatty acids. Who would have guessed essential fatty acids are essential? So we know that fats play a huge role in regulating hormones, organ support, in improving cholesterol. So there really should be a minimum amount of fats that you actually have in your diet. That would be anywhere between 15 to 30% of your daily caloric intake. So obviously, maybe on a rest day you might go higher even than that 30% because you don't need the carbohydrates. However, on those training days, just even in just your daily calorie intake, you'd want minimum that 15%. And we know that 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So you do really need to be quite careful when you're choosing those foods. Obviously, you want to go for the more healthy fat sources like your avocados and your oils, and you want to stay away from those trans fats. So stay out of McDonald's. One thing to consider when it comes to fats is they don't really change much. Maybe when you're going into the very end of a deficit, you might bring them down slightly, or at the end of an off season, if you're struggling to get food in, you might bring those fats up just so you get to your caloric intake. If we're going into a pretty big deficit, we obviously want to prioritize carbohydrates. Because we know that carbohydrates help aid in performance, and fats are there to help regulate hormones and just there for general system maintenance. So then getting down to that very end of that caloric deficit, you might actually bring that down to that lower 15% range. And if you're someone who is below that 15% range daily, it might be very beneficial for you just to increase that to that 15%, because we know that it helps cholesterol and it helps with testosterone, and those are two really key things. Now on the flip side, we know that in an off season it can be hard to get 4,000 to 5,000 calories towards the end of it. So that's when you can really use fats to your advantage and maybe bump those up and eat a bit fattier foods just to help you get those calories in. Because we know that fats are very calorie dense. Like if you're eating some rice and you decide to put a few glugs of olive oil over it, you can easily get another 500 calories in there if you're putting in a few. That's without even thinking about it. So fats can be used as a tool to help push calories up higher, and as well as to help preserve carbohydrates when you're bringing those calories down. A general rule of thumb is 10 grams of fat per 100 grams of carbohydrates. I would also say to put fats with every meal, because after a workout, for example, there's sometimes I might just have a low fat cereal and maybe just a thing away, and quite often it made me feel a little bit hypoglycemic, a little bit shaky, because my blood sugar skyrockets up and then plummets right back down. And if you incorporate those fats in, it can really slow that steep incline in insulin and blood sugar, and it can slow the decline on the way back down, so you don't get that crash feeling as well as that high feeling. So I tend to go with around 10 grams of fat per meal, and I generally have 5 meals per day. I also think a lot of good micronutrients comes from fats. It comes from your nuts, your peanut butter, your olive oil, which is something to consider in your off season. But of course you have to be conscious with it, as they are very calorie dense. As people who want to put on muscle and as people who want to perform on a daily basis, I would say the fats probably come on the lower end of those 3 macronutrients for myself, and I know a lot of people would disagree, and that's absolutely fine. But for me, I think you have to prioritize protein first, and then it's about maximizing my performance with carbohydrates. And I'm obviously not going below that minimum range of fats, and I want to keep my fats in a good place for hormone regulation, because if I was an assisted athlete, then I could be taking compounds that would help regulate my hormones, so I could bring my fats a bit lower down. But for us little natties out there, we have to make sure that we're getting the right amount of fats in. And then in an off season, if I physically can't get any more carbohydrates in, I will be increasing my fats just to help me get to that calorie goal at the end of the day. There's not too much to go on about fats. You don't want to delve in and make it super complicated. Just make sure you're getting between the 15 to 30% of your calories. And if you're someone who really enjoys eating fats, then obviously go towards the higher end of that spectrum. And if you're someone who doesn't enjoy the fatty foods and maybe they don't agree with you, come towards that 15%. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. Thank you all for watching. Peace.